The air is so dry it seems to crackle. A relentless sun bleaches everything to a pale, dusty gold, and the silence is so vast it feels like a sound of its own. You're walking through the emptiness of the California desert, where the horizon is a shimmering, unforgiving line. There's nothing out here, just heat and sand and the slow passage of time. Cannabis plants, thousands of them, their leaves a lush tapestry against the sand. This is not a farm. It's an oasis, a 420-acre declaration in the middle of nowhere. Welcome to Tyson Ranch. The name alone carries a weight, a tremor of memory. It conjures a very different kind of heat. The white-hot flash of arena lights, the roar of a bloodthirsty crowd, the primal fear in a man's eyes seconds before a fist connects. Mike Tyson. The name is a synonym for violence, for a terrifying animalistic brilliance that once made him the most feared athlete on the planet. But step through the gates here, and that legacy feels like a story from another lifetime. This place, this high-end playground rising from the sand, speaks of a different kind of power. It's about cultivation, not destruction. It's about luxury, not brutality. It's about building something that grows, rather than knocking something down. The air smells of earth and water, not sweat and liniment. The soundtrack is the gentle hum of irrigation, the whisper of the desert whine to the leaves, the distant laughter of someone floating down that absurd, wonderful river. This is a sanctuary, a personal Eden built by a man whose entire life was once a public war. It is, by any measure, a stunning reinvention. But to understand a profound distance traveled, to truly feel the scale of this transformation, you can't start in the calm of the desert. You have to go back to the noise, the chaos, and the concrete. You have to go back to the beginning, to the raw, unfiltered violence that first forged the legend of Iron Mike. Because this peace, this empire of green and glass, was not born from serenity. It was earned in the ring, paid for in pain, and resurrected from the ashes of a very public ruin. This is the story of a man who had everything, lost it all, and then, against every odd, decided to build something completely new from the shattered pieces. It's a story that begins not with a seed in the desert, but with a fist in Brooklyn. The roar is the first thing you forget. It fades into a white noise, a constant pressurizing in the ears. Then the lights, blinding, surgical, pinning you to the single square of canvas that is your entire world. But the fear is a taste. Metallic, coppery, thick on the tongue. It's not your own. You breathe it in from the man across from you. You see it in the slight tremble of his gloves as he touches them to his face, in the too quick blink of his eyes. You are 20 years old, and you have learned to feed on that taste. It is your fuel. Your name is Mike Tyson, and you are about to become the youngest heavyweight champion in history. But the genesis of that predator wasn't in a glittering Vegas arena. It was in the bruised asphalt jungle of Brownsville, Brooklyn, a world of cracked concrete and shuttered windows, where opportunity was a rumor and survival was a daily, physical negotiation. His list made him a target, a soft, sibling flaw in a hard world. The mockery was a constant drizzle. But he discovered something early. A well-thrown fist is a period. It ends sentences. By 13, he had been arrested nearly 40 times. A small, compact storm cloud of anger fighting boys much bigger. Because a fight, any fight, was the only language that felt true. Then walls, the juvenile detention center. For most, an end. For him, a beginning. In a cramped, sweat-stained gym, a boxing instructor named Bobby Stewart saw past the arrest record, past a defiant scowl. He saw the impossible, the hips of a middleweight, the explosive power of a heavyweight, and hands so fast they blurred. He saw a spark in the darkness, and he knew it needed a different kind of oxygen. He sent the boy to a legend, Cuz D'Amato, an old man with eyes like polished stones, living in a creaky house in the Catskills. Cuz didn't just see a fighter. He saw a lost son. He saw a vessel for philosophy. After Tyson's mother died, Cuz became everything: trainer, guardian, father, prophet. He gave him the Pete Boo style, a tight, coiled fortress of forearms and gloves in which hell could be unleashed in inches. He taught him to bob, to weave, to make himself a small, moving target, and then to uncoil with the kinetic fury of a cracked whip. But more than the mechanics, Cuz gave him a story. "You are the reincarnation of the great gladiators," he would whisper. "You will be the youngest champion. You will be feared." He poured belief into the boys' cracks, sealing them with discipline. The street brawler was melted down and recast in the old man's furnace. What emerged was something new, something designed. Iron Mike, a machine with a human heart, programmed for a single devastating purpose. And then the harvest. His professional debut in 1985 was less a fight and more a public execution. Hector Mercedes, knocked out in the first round. It set a terrifying tempo. This wasn't sport. It was a spectacle of inevitability. The world tuned in not to see if he would win, but how quickly he became appointment television. A primal force you watched from between your fingers. Marvis Frazier, son of a legend, lasted 30 seconds. The punch lifted him off his feet, a puppet with strings cut. Trevor Berbick, the reigning champion, fell in 2 rounds in 1986, a stumbling, helpless giant. At 20 years, 4 months, and 22 days old, the prophecy was fulfilled. Mike Tyson was champion. What followed was not a reign, but a demolition tour. Larry Holmes, a former king, was hammered into retirement in 4 rounds. Tony Tubbs disappeared under an avalanche of hooks. Michael Spinks, undefeated, a man who had never been knocked down, was sent crashing to the canvas in 91 seconds of pure, unanswerable violence. The Spinks fight wasn't a contest. It was a statement written in pain. It cemented the mythology. Mike Tyson was the baddest man on the planet, an unstoppable force, a natural disaster with raps on its hands. But inside the machine, the wiring was fraying, 'cause D'Amato, the architect, the keeper of the discipline, had passed away before Tyson ever won the title. The anchor was gone. The delicate ecosystem of focus, 'cause had built began to rot from within. Tyson split with his loyal trainer Kevin Rooney, the last tether to Cuz's world. The discipline that once defined him curdled into indulgence. The fear he once weaponized began to turn inward, becoming paranoia, a chaotic energy with no outlet. And in Tokyo, on a February night in 1990, the myth met the man, Buster Douglas, a 42-1 underdog, a man with his own grief as fuel, did the unthinkable. He stood up. He fired back. In the 10th round, a series of punches, an uppercut that seemed to lift Tyson's soul from his body, then a final concussive combination sent the invincible champion to the canvas. He fumbled for his mouthpiece. His eyes glazed with shock so profound it silenced the world. The invincible was human, and he was beaten. The fall was not a slope. It was a cliff. 2 years later, a conviction for rape. The world's most dangerous man was caged. The roar was replaced by the clang of steel doors. In the silence of an Indiana prison, he found a different kind of discipline in Islam and a new name, Malik Abdulaziz. He emerged in 1995, physically imposing but spiritually adrift, a king returning to a kingdom that had moved on. There were flashes of the old fury, a regained title, a few more knockouts, but the engine was sputtering. And then, in 1997, in a rematch with Evander Holyfield, the animal, cornered and frustrated, bit back. Literally, twice. He tore a piece of Holyfield's ear and spat it onto the canvas. It was an act of such surreal, barbaric desperation that it transcended sport. It was a final, ugly unraveling of the Iron Mike myth. The Nevada State Athletic Commission took his license, his dignity, and his last claim to the throne. He would fight again, but it was an epilogue. The fire was ash. He retired in 2005, bankrupt not just in money, but in purpose. The machine was shut down, left to rust in the yard of history. He had been the king of violence. He had built an empire on fear. And now it was all gone. The roar was a memory. The taste of someone else's fear was gone from his mouth, replaced by the bitter, metallic taste of his own defeat. The desert, when he finally turned towards it, must have felt familiar, empty, silent, a blank slate under a punishing sun, a place where something new or nothing at all could be built. The quiet after the fall is a different kind of roar. It's the hum of creditors on the phone, the hollow echo in a mansion too big for its owner, the deafening silence of a career lying in ruins. By 2003, the Empire of Fear had a price tag: $23 million in debt. The throne was repossessed. The crown pawned. Mike Tyson, who once made $30 million for 30 minutes of work, was bankrupt. This is where the story should have ended. A cautionary tale of flameout and excess, filed away with other sports tragedies. But Tyson has never followed a script written by anyone else. Before we see the phoenix, you have to understand the ashes, and his ashes were gilded. Imagine first the palaces, not the desert dream to come, but the monuments to the king at his zenith. In 1995, a 19,000-square-foot fortress in Bethesda, Maryland. From the outside, it whispered old money and restraint. Inside, it screamed Tyson. A 3-story spiral staircase, a central foyer drowned in light from a massive skylight. It felt less like a home and more like a cathedral built to worship a living God. Every window framed the manicured fairways of a country club, a world of green order he had bought his way into. There were 11 bathrooms, a library with a fireplace and a built-in bar, a sports court, a beer garden. It was a kingdom for a man who had conquered the world, a $2 million sanctuary that said, "This is what winning looks like." And the toys. My God, the toys. His garage wasn't a garage. It was a museum of moving ego. The 1986 Rolls-Royce Corniche, cream-colored, a convertible throne. He'd glide through New York in it, a king in his chariot. The rough Brooklyn edges smoothed by hand-stitched leather and the scent of polished walnut. It wasn't fast. It was present. Later, the Rolls-Royce Cullinan, a fortress on wheels with a starlight headliner. Because why look at the real sky when you can afford your own? But the cars spoke to more than luxury. They spoke to a mind that understood power in all its forms. The 1997 Bentley Continental T, one of only 73 ever made. A boxer of a car, he called it. Big, elegant, understated. But with a turbocharged heart that could move its 3-ton weight with a quiet, devastating grace. It was a car of a champion who appreciated craftsmanship. And then the ID. The Lamborghini Diablo Twin Turbo. If the Rolls was a crown, and the Bentley a suit of armor, the Diablo was the bare fist, a shrieking, 750 horsepower eruption of polished rage. It could go from 0 to 60 in the blink of an eye, a mechanical mirror of his own once untouchable hand speed. He didn't just drive it, he unleashed it. It was the sound of the animal, finally uncaged and given chrome and keys. Yet the cars were almost sensible. There were the tigers, not one but several. Bengal tigers, each costing more than a house, living in custom-built habitats in his backyard. He paid a trainer $125,000 a year to keep them, and himself safe. Friends would visit and see Iron Mike, the baddest man on the planet, walking a 500-pound predator on a leash like it was a poodle. It was the ultimate power flex, a living metaphor that had escaped its cage. I am so dangerous. My pets are the most dangerous creatures on earth. Then the court of the king. A man in a military uniform whose sole job was to scream guerrilla warfare at press conferences for a $300,000 salary. A $2 million gold-plated bathtub for his first wife. Diamond watches worth more than suburban homes. Handed to strangers on a whim. The spending wasn't just extravagant. It was performative, mythological, a continuous proof that the rules of reality did not apply to him. He wasn't buying things. He was building a universe where Mike Tyson was a central, chaotic god. And then the universe collapsed. The money, over $400 million earned with his fists, wasn't stolen or lost in bad investments. It was evaporated, dissipated into the atmosphere of his own limitless appetite. The mansions, the cars, the tigers, they were not assets. They were fuel for a fire that had finally burned through its last log. In 2003, the music stopped. The bankruptcy filing was a cold, legal autopsy of a dream that had eaten itself. The king was not just a throne. He was a debtor. This is the nadir. This is the desert before the oasis. But here is a twist, the pivot upon which his entire new legacy turns. Mike Tyson's greatest strength was never his left hook. It was his survivorship, his ability to absorb a blow that would kill any other man, and somehow, staggeringly, not just remain standing, but learned from the pain. The comeback didn't begin with a right hand. It began with a seed. In the quiet after the storm, he found a different kind of plant, cannabis, which he had long used as a balm for the physical and mental wreckage of his life, became more than a vice. It became a lens, a tool for peace. And then, with the sharp, unsentimental eye of a street kid who finally understood value, he saw it as something else, a business. Tyson 2.0. The name itself is a manifesto. It is not a return. It is a total reboot. Out went the chaotic entourage. In came business partners and horticulturists. Out went the mindless spending. In came branding, licensing, strategy. He took his most infamous moment, the bidonier, and turned it into a product. Mike Bites Gummies. It wasn't shame. It was ownership. Alchemy. Turning the lead of his scandal into the gold of a marketing campaign. And it worked, not as a gimmick, but as an empire. Tyson 2.0 exploded. From edibles to vapes to premium flower, it flooded the market. By 2023, it was projected to generate $150 million a year. The man who couldn't hold on to $400 million was now the CEO of a green rush. The fists that once generated pay-per-view bonanzas were now signing distribution deals. The voice that once threatened opponents now calmly discussed terpene profiles on podcasts. He had traded the sweat of the gym for the quiet focus of the boardroom. The fear was gone, replaced by a shrewd, hard-won respect. The money returned, but differently. It wasn't a torrent to be drowned in. It was a tool, a foundation. It bought the 420 acres of California desert, not for a hideout, but for a kingdom. It bought the sleek, $13 million Florida mansion on the water in Delray Beach, not as a chaotic party fortress, but as a serene, sun-drenched sanctuary for his family, complete with a private perch pond. The taste had changed. The hunger was no longer for more, but for better, for permanence. The roller coaster had not just climbed back up. It had jumped its tracks and was now flying over entirely new terrain. The fortune was rebuilt, but the man holding it was fundamentally remade. He was no longer a spending machine. He was a builder. And when you have fought your way back from the absolute zero of bankruptcy, when you have built a second fortune from the ground up with your mind and your name, you start to think not just about what you can take, but about what you can leave. The clenched fist, having learned to hold a seedling, was finally beginning to open, to give back. There is a quiet room in Las Vegas, far from the screaming crowds or the whispering leaves of the Cannabis ranch. The light is soft. The air is still. On a shelf, there is a small, framed photograph of a 4-year-old girl with a smile that could stop time. Her name was Exodus. In 2009, a tragic accident with a treadmill cord took her from this world. It is a loss from which no championship, no amount of money, no fame can ever shield you. It is a kind of blow that doesn't just knock you down. It changes the gravity of your entire world. For Mike Tyson, a man who had built his life on the principle of withstanding punishment, this was the one punch he could not roll with. It landed on the soul. In the suffocating aftermath, the roar of his past life became a meaningless static. The tough guy persona, the baddest man myth, it was all revealed as a costume, useless against a pain so profound and silent. Not the comeback of the brand, but the reconstruction of the man. It begins here, in the deepest void he had ever known. Out of that darkness, a different kind of strength was forged. If the loss of Exodus taught him the unbearable weight of fragility, it also forced him to grasp, with desperate hands, for what was truly solid, for what truly mattered. He found in the quiet partnership of his wife, Lakia Kiki Spicer. They married just weeks after the funeral, a union born not of glamour, but of necessity. Two people clinging to a life raft in a storm. With Kiki, there were no press conferences, no gold-plated bathtubs. There was stability. There was a shared breath in the dark. Together, they are raising their children, creating a home where the soundtrack is laughter, not chaos. The man who once prowled the ring alone now moves through his days as a husband, a father, a patriarch, not a predator. This newfound anchor changed his relationship with the world. The anger that once flowed outwards, a destructive river, began to be dammed, redirected, and channeled into something new, a need to be of use. Enter the Mike Tyson Cares Foundation. This is not the performative charity of a celebrity seeking good PR. This is the work of a man doing penance with purpose. He looks at the kids from neighborhoods like the one that forged him, the Brownsvilles of the world, where the only option seemed to be a fist or a felony. And he doesn't just see statistics. He sees himself. He sees the spark that Bobby Stewart once saw in a detention center gym. His foundation doesn't just write checks. It builds scaffolding. It provides the things he never had, the things no child should have to live without. Healthcare, after-school programs, counseling, job training, scholarships. It backs shelters for abused women in Las Vegas. It funds fitness programs in Los Angeles, delivering brand new sneakers to kids who've only ever known hand-me-downs. It's a holistic hand-up, designed not to create the next Mike Tyson, but to give kids a fighting chance at any life they choose. He has supported the Johnny Christopher Children's Charity for pediatric cancer research. He's worked with the Marty Hennessy Inspiring Children Foundation, using tennis and mentorship to carve paths out of poverty. The sport that saved him is now a tool he uses to save others. And then, in 2020, came the most symbolic gesture of this new chapter. At 54 years old, he stepped back into the ring, not for a paycheck, not for glory, but for them. His exhibition match against Roy Jones Jr. was billed as a spectacle, but for Tyson, it had a single, pure purpose. Out of the $10 million purse, the majority went to charity. "This fight is for charity," he said, his voice devoid of its old menace, filled with simple conviction. "It's not for me." The man who once fought for gold was now fighting to give it away. This is a final and most profound reinvention. From taker to giver, the journey is almost complete. The arc has been from terrifying force, through spectacular ruin, to a hard-won peace. The man who wants to find himself by the fear he could instill now measures his worth by the hope he can provide. The hands that were registered as lethal weapons now sign autographs, hold his grandchildren, and break ground on community centers. He has made a fortune, lost it all, and built a new one. But the true net worth of Mike Tyson in 2025 cannot be found on a financial statement. It is tallied in the quiet moments of a stable family life he never thought he'd have. It is measured in the potential of the children his foundation helps. It is written in the green rows of his desert ranch, a testament not to what he can destroy, but to what he can nurture. So here we are, back in the desert. The sun is a ripe orange, melting into the purple silhouette of the mountains. The day's fierce heat has softened into a gentle, embracing warmth. That impossible lazy river glows, a winding ribbon of reflected sunset. The cannabis plants, in the long evening light, cast delicate shadows that look like lace on the sand. And walking through it all, a figure. He moves slowly. There is a deliberate, almost meditative pace to his steps. The famous tiger tattoo ripples across his shoulder, a fossil from a previous geological era of his life. His hands, those historic instruments of violence, are tucked into the pockets of his jeans. His face, once a taut mask of menace, is relaxed. The eyes are watchful, but they hold a calm that feels deep and earned. This is Mike Tyson. Not the icon, not the scandal, not the bankruptcy statistic. This is the man, the curator of this quiet kingdom. Listen, you can hear it. Not the roar of a crowd of thousands, but the whisper of a breeze through the green fronds. Not the bell for round one, but the distant, contented murmur of a few visitors floating down the water, their laughter carried softly on the air. This is the sound of his victory now. It is not a sound that deafens. It is a sound that settles. Look at what he has built, not with his fists, but with his will. Tyson Ranch is more than a business venture. It is a physical poem, written in glass, water, and living green. It is his argument to the world, his thesis. It says, a man is not one thing. A man can contain multitudes. The ferocity of a predator and the patience of a gardener. The capacity for great error and the resilience for profound change. The journey is a destination. From the brutal concrete crucible of Brooklyn to the dizzying, gilded peak of global fame. Through the terrifying public unraveling and the cold, silent rock bottom of bankruptcy and despair. Into the quiet, painful forge of personal loss. where the metal of his soul was truly tempered, and out again into the clear desert air with a new purpose, a new peace, and a new kind of power. He is no longer the baddest man on the planet. He has transcended the title. He is something more complex, more human, and in its own way, more powerful. A builder, a planter, a father, a redeemer. The last chapter of Mike Tyson's story was not written in a boxing ring in 2005. It is being written here every day in the soil of this ranch. It is written in the business ledgers of Tyson 2.0, a testament to savvy, not savagery. It is written in the homework done by a child his foundation helped, in the safe bed provided for a fleeing mother, in the quiet stability of his Florida home where his family sleeps, safely by the water,